Have you ever considered lowering your standards? This sounds like a very strange question to ask, especially coming from a professional declutterer and organizer. Why would I ask you to lower your standards? Let's take a step back. Usually the people we professional organizers and declutterers work with are people who have too much stuff for their own good. They are hindered in their daily life and they're hindered in their happiness by the sheer amount of physical items they have. However, coming back to standards, those deal with emotional items or requirements or demands we make on ourselves. And there can be an overload of that as well. Now, I'm not saying that anybody's standards are not their own. If you want to hold yourself to high standards, by all means do. But maybe some of those standards could be lowered to decrease your anxiety. If you feel stressed by having to keep up those high standards, maybe it's time to consider that those standards might be bad for you. They may be too high. They may demand too much of you. And lowering them just a little bit and allowing the dust to settle for one more day rather than dusting every day might be better for your mental and physical health in the long term. What do I mean by this? The question of high standards tends to come up more in a work environment where everybody is held to be as good as possible and not make any mistakes. And in that environment, there is reason to believe that standards have to be very high. Again, those standards are set by the boss and everybody has to comply with them. And they may not be the right standards for the business, but that's a different issue. However, when you're looking at your private household and your private life, there is something to be said for lenience and for not going overboard with your standards. What I'd like you to do this week is to take a moment and consider what kind of standards you impose on yourself. No judgment, just look at what kind of standards you hold dear and you abide by. And in a second step, if you find any of those standards that make you question if they're really necessary or if they are really you or that they have been imposed upon you from the outside, maybe, just maybe, consider letting them go just a little bit, allowing yourself a bit more freedom with them. It's a hard thing to do. Dealing with internalized emotional standards and clutter is much harder than dealing with the physical clutter that we can see. Because physical clutter has physical effects. We bump our knees against it, or we see it sitting in the corner, or it makes us anxious because we know we have to do something about it. Mental clutter is much more tricky to deal with because nobody else sees it. There's no pressure from the outside. There is not that sense that someone might come into my house and see how I live. Nobody's ever going to come into your brain except for you. And that makes it all the more important to take that step back occasionally and consider things the way they are and how they appear to you. Good luck with that. Stay clutter aware and come back for more. If you want more, there are options. Click the round logo to subscribe to this channel or select the playlist in the middle to see more content or check out the links in the description below. Oh, and feel free to like this video.